Hello and welcome to a very special episode, ladies and gentlemen. We are here at Tommy Gun Warehouse in Greeley, Pennsylvania, home of Car Arms. In their backyard, they have this wonderful 600-yard shooting range, and at every 100 yards, they have multiple steel targets. Range manager Matt was nice enough to come out here and let me shoot in the pouring rain and the freezing cold. Conditions are less than stellar for shooting, but perfect for optics testing, because if we can't see the 600-yard steel through the fog that we have downrange, well, we're gonna see if these scopes can actually do that or not. As far as what we have on the table, on my left, your right, we have the WarHawk 2-10, then the GLx 2.5-10, the Continental 2-12, the Leupold Mk4HD 2.5-10, the March FX 1.5-15, the Steiner H6Xi 2-12, and last but not least, the Athlon Helos BTR II 2-12. They're all a bit of a mouthful. This is going to probably be its own separate video, because there's probably going to be a lot of footage that I'm going to get for this. My ideas for running all of these we'll talk on very soon, but I'm going to use this footage to test all of these scopes on the full comparison video that I plan on making for these 7. I'm going to be dubbing it the IPVO, or Intermediate Powered Variable Optic Comparison, because MPVO is very generic and broad. LPVOs should start with a 1, and technically anything that starts with a 1.1 to 4, roughly, is a medium powered variable optic, which is a very large range. There are a lot of optics out there. This comparison is only going to be talking about scopes that are in the 2 to 2.5x magnification range on the minimum. That's just the way it's going. Well, with the exception of the March, it's 1.5. But that's a perfect case in point of why this is going to be an intermediate powered variable optic comparison when I do that, versus an MPVO, because I have no 3 to 15s, I have no 2.5 to 15s, I have strictly 1.5 to 2.5, and varying top ends at least 10x. I also have a plethora of different optics that I've reviewed over the last 6 years of me doing this channel that are of scopes of the same magnification range. So that's going to play into that comparison video, hopefully quite well. Anyway, what I plan on doing here today is throwing on a scope cam, a trigger cam 2.1 that a good friend of mine sent in for me to borrow for this test. And we are going to see how effective these rifle scopes are at engaging targets out to 600 yards. I'm going to be doing 2 courses of fire with each of them. The first one is going to be using the reticle for holding, and the second one is going to be using the turrets for dialing. I figured if everything works well, I should be able to hit all the targets that I try to aim for in both areas. If one doesn't work in one way versus the other, that means that there's an issue. I've already tracked all of these. Most of them track really, really well. Some of them are a little questionable, most notably the Steiner. That doesn't really dial up that much for elevation. But from what I've already been able to test out here, I have to dial about 6 mils, which shouldn't give any of these scopes a problem. But there's only one way to really find out. So let's get behind this gun and see how it does. We've got a giant camera on the back of this SwampFox WarHawk, but we're going to see how this does. This should be mostly zeroed for 100 yards. Going to confirm and then push back. I'm going to keep it at 12. I want to keep all these scopes at 12x and see if they are even capable of being at their maximum magnification. So let's go for the small plate to the right. That's a good solid hit. Now, because we're at 100 yard zero and I'm shooting 77 grain OTMs, we have to dial up for elevation at 200, which is going to be 1 mil. I'm going to aim for the small plate on the right. I would say that we are on. Now, 300 yards should be 2 mils, roughly. Looking through the scope cam, this trigger cam is definitely challenging. Conditions down there suck. Good solid hit. And then 400 yards should be 3 mils. I did lie earlier. I said that I was going to use the reticle for holding and then dial, but I'm a little slow. It's a little cold out here. It sounded like a good hit. Let's send another one just because that's a big plate. Let's go for the smaller guy. I'm gonna hold left edge. I cannot spot my shots or my misses. I don't know how the camera is going to look, but it's pretty nasty out there. 5 mils at 500. I'm going to aim for the large silhouette. Aim for the head. That was the hit. And then 600 yards is about 6 mils. I did a very rough calculation and just to make sure I was going to get on target out here. That looks like it's a hit. I can just barely tell that the target is moving. Do I have, yes, I got another round. I'm going to send it on the gong at 600. I'm going to hold left edge towards the top. I think that was a hit.
I heard that one. It was a hit.
That was a hit? All right. So SwampFox WarHawk already proving that it's capable. As far as dialing goes, it's a mixture of the rain clouding up this front lens really badly and these conditions really sucking. There's a lot of fog downrange, and then having another piece of lens, several lenses on the back of it is definitely darkening down the image and making it much more challenging for me to actually use it. So yeah, less than ideal. But what we're gonna do now is I'm going to use the reticle and we're gonna go 4.56. This way I won't have to be out here for another 4 hours. And 4.56 is gonna be the hardest part anyway. So this thing looks like it's recording. At 400 yards, we have to hold 3 mils. I have extra ammunition. Let's see how this looks. That's 400 yards, 2, 3. Excellent, very easy to use this reticle. Wow, these targets are really getting foggy down there. I'm going to hold up for a second and see if I can clean the front lens. You'll see the lens before I do. We're going to 500 yards, so hold about 5 mils. Oh, that's way better. 5 mils at 500. No call. That was an impact?
Negative.
Negative? All right. I'm out of it. The wind is pushing left to right, so I'm going to do the exact same elevation hold and hold left edge. Wait, did I hit the gong to the right of it? To the left of it? Oh, you know what? The wind down there is pushing right to left. I didn't even notice the flag.
Impact.
That was the impact?
Yeah.
All right. The wind flags between 4 and 500 are actually switching back and forth, so. And then 6 mils at 600 yards. I'm gonna, I'll hold left edge. Tough to say, but I'll say that it was close enough. The reticle on this is very easy to pick up and count the drops. They're labeled very clearly. I like that when you get behind this thing, you look through it, especially if you're holding dead center on the full mil mark. There's a little opening. You put it around your target and you break the shot. Not bad at all. Tracks perfectly fine for elevation, and using the reticle for holding over is perfectly fine. And again, it should be, because this scope actually tracked one of the best out of the bunch. Next up is the Primary Arms GLx. I moved the table back. Thankfully, I'm the only person here on this crazy day, and I got permission to do so. I forgot to mention on the WarHawk, worst name ever, once I set the side parallax at 200 yards, I kept it there for the entirety of that shoot. I never had to do anything else. So very impressive. GLX is up here. Should be zeroed in for about 100 yards. We're going to find out right now, and then we'll do the exact same course of fire. I'm going to leave this at its maximum magnification and see how she does. I'd say that's a good hit. This time I'm actually going to hold first, and then we're going to dial. .300 should be 2 mils. Wind looks pretty calm right now. I held low on that. Still hit it. Good to go. Just a folly on my part. 400 should be 3 mils. Yes. No call. Let's send another one. I'll hold. What are the wind flags doing? Not doing much. I'll hold a little high. Uh-oh, no call. Hold left edge. There we go. I'll chalk that one up to a little bit of hidden wind and or shooter error. 5 mils at 500. I'm going to aim for the silhouette. That was a good solid hit. Holding left edge, I'm out of ammunition. And now let's go out to 6 or so mils at 600. I should also mention that what you've been seeing is the side parallax set also to 200 yards and not being adjusted. 6 mils, 600 yards left edge. No call. Let's try this again. What's the wind doing? Looking kind of flat. I'll hold a little bit more center at 6 mils. Hit. Alrighty. We are again going to start now at 4, 5, and 6 and go up from there. 400 yards is 3 mils. Hold dead center. I'm going to aim for the big gong. Left edge. No call. Making sure I got my dope right. My brain's a little cold, so I don't want to mess this up. All right, that's a little odd. Maybe I'll hold a little high. Okay, so it's just dropping a little bit low. That could just be me. 5 mils for 500, roughly. Again, this is all done with a very simple, fast zero. Hold left shoulder. It looks like it was a hit. Certainly sounded like it. I'll go for the gong to the left of it. Good solid hit. And 6 mils for 600. The glass on this thing is quite good. That was a hit. And just one more for good luck. Maybe I shouldn't have done one more for good luck. As you can very clearly see, the GLX performs quite well in these conditions. The side parallax was set to 200 and stayed there. No reason for me to adjust it because it works really, really well. Moving back off the underside of the roof was a smart move because now the front lens is not completely soaking wet, just slightly moist. GLX works fine. Holding with the reticle is my preferred way of shooting this, actually. The reticle is very easy to pick up and hold for. All the stadia lines that you see are very easy to read, and they're a lot finer than the center chevron. It's almost set up in a way that I would probably never even dial with this thing. I mean, keep in mind, I usually run a 200-yard zero on all my 5.56 rifles. So that'd be 1 mil less I'd have to hold for at 600 yards, roughly. And that would make even more sense just to hold. Because holding, let's get back on camera. If holding there, you know, if I'm holding dead center of that target, I'm obscuring half the target. Whereas if I'm holding 6 mils on center there, that is a much finer aiming point. Personally, if this was a capped windage and the same turret on the elevation, I think it would be perfect because it would give you the option of going, I'm going to hold or I'm going to dial. This is a really, really well set up optic, and performing out here, absolutely perfect. All right, let's see if we are pretty good to go. Yes, we are. We are behind the March FX 1.5 to 15. I just confirmed 0. It's good enough to do what we're trying to do here today. We are currently looking at 100 yards at like 6x. That is what 15x looks like. I do have to adjust the side parallax on this. Again, I'm shooting all these at their maximums because if I can't use them at their maximums, what's the point? Granted, these conditions are quite poor, but it's perfect to see how well these things can actually perform in a wild myriad of environments. 100 yards, I do have to choke up on this just because the way the mount is. No surprise there. Let me hold using the reticle. 1 mil, 200. Good solid hit. 2 mils at 300. Good solid hit. 3 mils at 400. That looked like a good solid hit. 5 at 500, which is when the stadia lines get a lot thicker. It's very challenging for me to see the bottom of this target. Let me see if I can adjust the side parallax and make it better. Very touchy on the side parallax, but we did get a slightly better looking image. Good solid hit. And 6 mils for 600. Left edge shoulder. And that's a hit. The one nice thing about having slightly more magnification is you can spot targets moving at 500 and 600 yards a little bit easier. However, I don't even know if you can see where I was holding because the trigger cam crops the image considerably. So you might have missed the last 2 shots. So what I'm going to do now is back this out to 10x, which is where I think the scope would really benefit from being for more ways than one. And we are going to try that one more time. 5 mils at 500. Correct? Yes, correct. It sounded like a hit. I'll say it was a hit. Screw it. And then 6 at 6. No call on that one. I wonder if the reticle shifted a little bit. So when I was dialed all the way in for maximum magnification, that thick crosshair at 6 o'clock is actually the duplex where the illumination lives. We dial it down and you could see that the drops are a little bit finer. I would love to see that post just be skinny all the way down. Use the post at 3 and 9 o'clock to stay thick. The post at 6 o'clock to be skinny. It'd be a lot easier to pick up. You can't see it from where you are, but me getting behind this thing, that reticle is just getting nasty. Getting nasty. Let's move back to 400 and dial up to 3 mils. Should be around there. Hold dead center, 400 yards. You know, let's go for the silhouette. Good hit. Up 2 more mils for 5. Good solid hit. And 1 more for 6. If I had, oh, I got 1 round left. Let's see if I could single feed this. My hands are cold, my gloves are wet. Oh, no. There we go. Already dialed up for elevation. 6 mils, 600 yards. Image definitely looks hazy. Gonna try to adjust the side parallax. That's as good as we got, folks. That's about it. 15X in these conditions, 600 yards is not great. Not great at all, but let's see if we can at least make contact. Wind is pushing left to right. I'm gonna hold left edge. No call, but that's gonna be it for this. There's a lot to love about the scope, but I do feel that being a 1.5 to 15 is far exceeding its capacity. It's a lot larger than the Shorty 1 to 10. It's heavier, but it's got the same turrets, same reticle, same a lot of things, same 10x multiplier, and it performs, I feel, better than the March Shorty, but optically, especially at 15X, it really starts to fall apart. We're still dialed for 6 mils of elevation. I'm gonna back it out to 10X, and we're gonna get back on 600 yards and see what it looks like. Definitely better. But the other scopes that we've looked at already at 10X at this distance, they just seem a little bit better to me. Call me crazy, call me blind, call me whatever you want, but that's just how it seems. Next on the list is the awesome Athlon Helos BTR Gen 2 2-12. This rifle scope is basically married to this rifle now. Originally, I had for this gun my Steiner P4XI 1-4 and my Miopta Optica 6 3-18. One extreme and the other. Salute. One extreme and the other. Until I got this scope. And it filled the role of the P4XI for how I shoot that optic on this gun, which was typically in the 1.5 to 2 would be my minimum magnification on that scope. And going up to 12X on this and having it be a usable 12X is more than enough. The Optica 6 going up to 18 is great, but on a gun like this where my max engagement will be about 600 yards, just a little bit much. This fills the gap between both of those optics, I feel, really, really well. So with that being said, let's get ourselves on at 100 yards and show you one of the perks of this gun is just how good the reticle is at these distances. I want to hold 1 mil at 200. Of course I missed, but that is why we have more magnification. Going to hold first and then we will dial up. Oh, just to the left. All right, my windage is slightly off still. I apologize. I made windage adjustments preemptively. It would be better if I actually hit the target. All right, there we go. My windage, I think, is still off, but let's keep going and see if maybe I'll be lucky enough to actually make good hits. 300 yards should be 2 mils. Missed that shot. It would help if I actually held on the correct drop. I'm not doing the scope any favors right here, right now. 3 mils at 400. Just to the left, I was holding left edge for wind. All right, there we go. I guess I did hit the silhouette. 5 for 500. You know what? My windage is still off. I screwed up on this one. There we go. All right. I'm off by like 2 or 3 tenths. 6 mils at 600. I have to hold right edge as opposed to left. Yep, all right, that's why I looked pathetic. Fantastic. All right, so I'm sorry for not shooting that any better, but my windage was slightly off. All these have slightly different numbers on them, and this is a different mount from the other mounts that I've been using. So there's my Reister excuse for the day. The reticle on this is fantastic for holding. It's super simple and easy to read. Less information is sometimes better because you're not getting confused at where to go. I mean, you could see for yourself, yes, the numbers are large, the numbers are thick, the crosshairs themselves are a little bit on the thicker side. The best thing about this though, bringing it down to 200 yards, let's see if we can hit 400, which is only 3 mils. 1, 2, 3. That's the nice thing about this reticle. You could use it even at minimum magnification out to 400 yards effectively and efficiently and easily. So I got to load up another magazine because I am out and we're going to dial it for elevation. All right, we are back in with a loaded magazine. We're not going to stay at 2x. We're going to go back to its maximum and we're going to go up 3 mils. For 400 yards. Fantastic. 5 mils for 500. Fantastic. And 6 mils for 600. Gonna be overzealous here. Looks like I just went over it. Yep. Wow. The more I shoot with the scope, the more I love it. No problems holding. Once I figured out that my windage was slightly off, that was a me problem, not a scope problem. Zero issues with that. Holding with the reticle, it's one of my favorite ones so far. Very easy to read. The numbers are big and bold. You can see them. They're not so big that they take up a lot of space. And when we dial for elevation at distance, that 1 MOA dot in the middle or 0.3 mil dot in the middle doesn't seem too big. Yes, if you prefer a finer dot for a finer aiming point, by all means, go for it. But this scope sort of sits in the middle of the two styles of optics that we're looking at here today. Yes, they're all IPVOs, but some of them are definitely set up more for precision and some more for speed. This sits right towards the middle, borderline towards the speed because of how the reticle is set up. Using this reticle at 2x at 400 yards, easy enough to hold with, and dialing up to 6 mils of elevation for 600 yards, that 1 MOA dot in the middle yields no issues whatsoever. It is cold, ladies and gentlemen. Steiner H6Xi. yeah, that's all there is to really say about it. A lot of people have been really curious about the scope, myself included. And thanks to a very kind individual, they let me borrow this. We are at 12X here. I believe it is the STL reticle. And I don't think it is the best setup for this magnification range, as we will talk about soon. But when you're at maximum magnification, it's not half bad. The crosses do get a little bit big, or a little bit confusing for some, but once you program your mind like, oh, that's every mil, it's not so bad. 100 yards, not even a question or concern. 200 yards, holding a mil. Just over the left edge. There we go. I will continue holding slightly right. 2 mils at 300. Solid hit. 3 at 400, and I'm going to have to adjust the parallax a little bit. The parallax on this scope doesn't seem like it really does a whole lot. Optically, this I feel underperforms compared to some of the other scopes, but you know, to each their own. 3 mils, a little hard. See, the thing is with this reticle, while I have it here and I'm holding for it, the numbers on the side are really small and they get confused to me. I get confused rather with the crosses. So in between 2, 4, and 6, you got the cross on the outside. I can't differentiate that between the numbers easily or fast enough. So it takes me a little while to like, okay, wait, I got to count and confirm. So 3 mils at 400, 1, 2, 3, hold right-ish. Good solid hit. 5 at 5. And again, it's going to be there. Good solid hit. And 6 for 6-ish. Wind is hitting me left to right down there. It looks pretty calm, but let's hold right-ish edge. And a good solid hit. Optically, I think it's definitely on the weaker side, especially holding out at 6 mils at 12X. Granted, I am looking through the trigger cam, which does add a couple layers of glass in between my eye and the scope. I will be shooting another round with all of these scopes without the trigger cam on there, just to get a better sense of what's actually going on. And to really that to you. But it just seems a little bit milky if I had to put a name to it or a title to it. Dialed up 3 mils. We're going to start at 400 and push back. I love these Lancer mags, but the first round's always a little bit tight. All right, I'm going to feel cocky and go for the small plate. Yep. Shouldn't have gone for the small plate, Matt. Medium plate will do. 5, 5. These the elevation turret on this is also 12 mils per rotation, and it makes a quick turn of the turret a little bit challenging at times, because if you're in between 1/10 of a mil, it's going to be a little bit tricky. Good solid hit, and then 6-ish. Yeah, like the stadia lines seem a little bit tight, and the way the turret locks on the erector, it could really favor a line. It's a little tricky. It's something you really have to pay attention to. 6, 4, 6, small gong, right edge. Good, solid hit. The reticle definitely has some nice things going for it. I don't mind the crosses inboard. I wish the numbers were a little bit bigger on the outboard, and the crosses on the outside could be eliminated. I think it would definitely make it easier for me to pick up what's what on the reticle at distance. But glass-wise, it just doesn't seem up to snuff. I really prefer the glass on the Helos. Maybe it's just me, but maybe it's just the scope. I'm not really too sure. I'm glad that we didn't have to go above 6 mils, because this thing tops out at 7.8 before it starts to jam up. This is the worst performing elevation gain of any of the scopes here by a very large margin. But beyond that, it seems to track well enough, and this is one that doesn't really track that great. Still had no problems engaging 600 yards, both holding for elevation and dialing, so still pretty good. Next up is the brand new Vector Continental 2-12x44. This thing on paper is very impressive, and if it's anything like its little brother, the 1-8 ED fiber dot that I just reviewed a couple weeks ago, then we're in for a real treat. All the controls are about the same, and the reticle definitely finds a sweet spot between precision and speed. Well, let's see how well this thing performs out here. Side parallax is set to 200-ish yards. 100 yards, let's go for a small plate this time. Very good, 200 yards, 1 mil. Just off the right edge, it looked like. There we go. .300 yards, just about 2. .400 yards is 3. Good hit. 400 yards. 500 yards is 5. That looks like a good hit. 600 yards is about 6. Just off the right edge. Good, solid hit. So the wind is definitely starting to pick up. It feels like it. I am genuinely cold. So let's go up 1, 2, 3 mils for 400 yards. Let's go for a cocky shot. That was a good hit. 5 mils for 500. No call on that one. Let's give it another go. Ooh, just off the top edge. All right, so we're a little high. And there we go. Okay, that wind is really starting to push down there. I'm holding a little bit over half a mil. And 6 mils for 600. I'm going to hold about 3/4 of a mil for wind. Just off the top edge. Oh no! All right, let's try that again. I'm gonna hold bottom edge about 3/4 of a mil. Bang, bang, bang! Awesome reticle at 12x. Awesome reticle out to 600 yards, both holding and dialing. Excellent glass. I can spot my shots at 600 yards with relative ease. Yeah, pretty good. I haven't turned any of the illuminations on today, but it's because I haven't needed the illuminations. I'm shooting this exactly as I would. I would honestly not run any of these at their maximum magnification for most of these shots. But to give you an idea of what this thing looks like at 2x, I'm still dialed up 6 mils. That's a little bit of a tricky shot. I won't even be able to spot it. Let's go back to 400 yards. I felt that was a good in between. Back to 0, 3. Just left edge, that small plate right there. Yeah, it looked like a hit. Definitely saw a big splash. Yep. Good enough for me. So far, very impressive. I love the controls on this, and the glass really is better than it has any right to be. But let's get to our last and final scope for the day. The last scope of the day, thankfully, because it is cold, I am officially very, very cold, is the Mk4 HD 2.5 to 10. The TMR reticle is very old now, upwards of probably 30 years old if I had to hazard a guess, and I think it's going to show a little bit here today. Anyway, we are at 10x. Let's confirm our 0 at 100 and work our way out. Now let's go with the small target. I just nicked the edge, but that's good enough. Note there's a little bit of purple fringing on the pole, but that's about it. Sharpness, clarity, perfect at 100. Moving out to 200, if I could find it. Good solid shot. 300 is 2 mils. Just over the top, it looked like. There we go. I wonder if the barrel is warming up a little bit too much, and that's why it's throwing some shots. 3 mils for 400. Good solid hit. 5 for 5. And this is the problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No call on the windage. Let's hold left edge. I want to say yes. I want to say that was a hit, but let's send another one on the smaller gong. Oh, I saw it a little high and left, so there we go. Good solid hit. And then 6 mils for 600, and I'll hold right edge. And a good solid hit. So optically, this thing is one of the best performing scopes here. It is perfectly sharp and clear from 100 to 600 at 10x, no issues. The reticle is just a little bit on the older side. There's no numbers next to the drops, so you have to count each and every one. And because they're the same size up until 5 mils, you have to keep note of that. A lot of training will definitely help with that, but I find that it takes me a little bit longer to confirm, like, hey, I'm at 4 mils, or hey, I'm at 3.5 mils. That's the only real issue that I have found with this reticle. Other than that, it does get very thick at 5 mils to 6 mils if you're holding, especially at distance, which is what you're going to be holding it at distance. So it's definitely not perfectly set up for super accurate shooting, but I was still able to make a very solid hit at a pretty medium-sized target. I want to say that's, actually, wait, the gong sizes are up there. 600 yards, there's an 8-inch and a 12-inch, a 1-inch, a 2-inch, an 8-inch, and a 12-inch gong. I'll ask Matt, but I want to say that might be a 12-inch gong. Anyway, still doable. Let's now dial up 3 mils for 400 yards. Oh yeah, I am very, very uncomfortably cold. Good solid hit, no surprise there. 5 mils. Good solid hit there. And 6 mils. A good solid hit there. This scope is very easy to shoot. It's very fast. It's very clear. The reticle, I think, could definitely be tweaked a little bit, but as an overall package, this thing is very, very, very good. I mean, I love how simple. I love and hate how simple it is. But I mean, there's no denying that this thing is very, very capable. And then going back down to 0 is super fast and easy. And of course, I missed that shot, but the wind is changing. Wind is changing dramatically down there. And that's a hit. So, painfully impressive. Very painfully impressive. This is the only scope here today that doesn't have a side parallax. Most of the other scopes, I haven't really had to tweak the parallax. I left them at 200, and as you saw, they were perfectly fine out at distance. But this just seems a notch above. So there you have it. 7 scopes perform a little bit different from one another, but all of them were capable of doing the task at hand. 600 yards for all these scopes, I feel, is probably on the higher side, or rather the farther side of what their overall capabilities and maximum distances are. Could you stretch them out further? Yeah, but not in conditions like this, not easily, at least not on a 5.56 easily in conditions like these anyway. But all of them worked really, really well. Like I'd mentioned during one of the scope reviews, I want to split these up into 2 groups, precision focused and speed focused. A couple of them are definitely better suited for the speed focused sort of things. So if I was to divvy that up, how would it look? It probably looks something like this. Yeah, something like this, I would have to say. The March is definitely the most capable overall with the reticle, just from how crazy it is with the dual focal plane reticle, but it's not my personal favorite, but it's very fast at minimum magnification. Same thing with the TMR, same thing with the AMHR2 or the AHMR2. Don't know the name of the reticle in the Vector, but that sort of like splits the difference between the two. And the H6Xi is really, really fine at the center at 2 to like 4x. 4 to 5, it starts to get a little bit better. And it gets better the higher you go in the magnification. But the reticle, the STL found in the Steiner, I think would be much better suited for a 3 to 18, if not a 5 to 25. I think in the 2 to 12, it's definitely on the finer side of things. And it's really unfortunate because it's one of the things that's really holding that scope back. The ACSS reticle found in the GLX actually should go more in the middle, if anything, because the center chevron is very large. In fact, you know what? Yeah, I have to shift these around. I apologize. The center chevron is very large on the ACSS, and it's very easy to pick up with the eye as well as the semicircle around it. And but it still works well for precision as well because the drops are very fine and very easy to pick up and read. That leaves us with the Recce reticle, which the posts at 3, 6, and 9 are very thick but very short. And inside that, it's fairly fine but still capable of being used out here on lower magnifications. I didn't use all of these scopes on lower magnifications today. I had a very short amount of time to do this, and I am literally shaking right now from how cold I am. I'm sure you might even be able to hear it in my voice. But there you have it. IPVO's intermediate powered variable optics. Using them out to 600 yards, it was a non-issue for any of these. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I have to thank all the individuals for sending these in, well, most of these in, as well as my friend for sending in the camera to make it as cool as it was. I had a great time. This is a lot of fun, and Tommy Gun Warehouse is an absolute great shooting facility. If you're in the northeast area of Pennsylvania or in the tri-state area, you should definitely come check them out. They're about to close for a couple months because no one around here is open in the dead of winter. Anyway, My cover over my camera just slipped down, so you're probably cutting half my head off, but thank you all very much for watching. And as always, I'll see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe Stars subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.